Greetings, my name is Tim and I work in the Ministries team at the Baptist Union. I know some of you, but not many of you, so I'm here probably until lunchtime tomorrow. Do please come and say hello if you get the chance, or if you find yourself sitting near me at mealtime, whatever, do have a chat, that would be great. So I bring greetings from the staff team at Baptist House, BUGB staff team, and just quickly, some of you will be totally familiar with this, a quick bit of orientation, just in case you're thinking, well, who are they at Baptist House and what's going on? We're part of course, Baptist Together, the broader organisation that includes all of us, not really an organisation so much as a movement. And we're trying to serve you, the staff team are trying to serve you as we try and fulfil this vision of growing healthy churches in relationship for God's mission. And there you can see on that sort of, well, it's not a pie chart, it's not split up, they're split up equally here. But starting top right, you can see the type of things we're getting up to. So I guess primarily through associations, we're seeking to equip churches for mission, primarily through the colleges, but not only. We're investing in godly leadership, primarily through the specialist teams at Baptist House. We're trying to offer specialist advice in HR and safeguarding and legal and finance, and of course also offering a voice into the public square through Steve Tinning, some of you may know, not least, and others. And then I guess primarily through our networks, we're trying to encourage pioneering and planting. So those are just some of the things that we are doing. And so you're all disappointed because you haven't got Lee, really, aren't you? So for those of you who know Lee Johnson, my co-team leader for the Ministries team, he would love to be here. He got the Wales gig, so he's in South Wales at the moment. And we try between us and a few others at Baptist House to get around the different associations if we can. But just quickly, in case you don't know the other members of the team, Matt Caesar's just started. He's 2 weeks in, and he is our new 18 to 35 development coordinator after the departure of Isabella for a church planting in London. Isabella's down here. So Isabella's handed over to Matt. Samantha is looking after the Project Violet requests that landed with the specialist teams to try to think about the experience of women in ministry. And then along the bottom, you've got Yvonne, Mandy, Hilary and Lisa, all with various administrative tasks within the team. And I'm sure some of you will have had cause to have an email from one of them or have spoken to them. Apart from Hilary, you should never have to contact Hilary. She administers the church's ministerial counselling service, and if you use it, you access it through their website for CMCS, and she will not know who you are, we will not know who you are. It is completely anonymous, so it's confidential. So that's why you should never come across Hilary, but she does a great, faithful job in the background administering the CMCS. Just a few things that we're doing as a team before I come on to the main one that I'm going to talk about now. First is, there is in the next month or so, we're going to be launching some pastoral boundary training. And yes, if you're an accredited minister or a recognised minister, we'll be asking you to watch this. It's a half-hour video, but there is opportunity and some questions within that for discussion with others to do it in minister clusters and so on, if possible. The reason we're doing this is two things, really. We wonder whether the game has moved on with regard to what is acceptable these days in pastoral boundaries, how we visit people, the way we use physical touch, how we pray for people, all sorts of things that may have been absolutely fine a number of years ago do not seem to be now, as we become more aware of safeguarding, as there is a greater suspicion of people in positions of trust. I think that's our reality. And we've got to be on this because we don't want complaints arriving on the ministry's desk about ministers. There is also, by the way, a greater propensity for people to complain about us. I almost want to say it's an occupational hazard. Did you know the number of complaints we get has gone up significantly? And yet also the number of complaints we dismiss as having no basis has gone up significantly, because there is a greater propensity for complaint. CMD, Continuing Ministerial Development. In fact, the last time I was at the London Baptist Ministers' Conference was in 2020, I think, just before lockdown, and you were the guinea pigs. Thank you to those who were there as I rolled out the CMD framework. And a big part of that is to encourage ministers to get some form of accompaniment. Do not be on your own. get a mentor, a coach, a pastoral supervisor, a spiritual director, and particularly if you want to know what pastoral supervision is and get a bit of a taster of that, there's an online day on the 27th of April. There's an asterisk against it because it was going to be in March, so in case you got a message, it's in March. It's in April. Some details will be coming out hopefully next week in the next CMD and Ministries News email. And that's a chance to find out more about pastoral supervision. However, what we're going to talk about today is minister numbers and a deliberately empty lectern or pulpit. So I was rather alarmed to see the title put on your programme is Tim Ferguson is going to speak about the future of formation. Well, I just need to explode that myth a little bit. I'm not actually sure about the future of formation or where we're going. I think we're in a time of transition and where our current methods of formation are being challenged or they're not attracting people. And I think we need to perhaps big up what we are doing as well as think about what we're not doing. And maybe we need to have a bit of a mixed economy of options for ministerial formation. But our basic problem is we don't have enough ministers. That's the long and the short of it. So you may have seen these statistics, but in case you haven't, they were in the Baptist Times magazine, or some of them were at the Baptist Times website a few weeks ago. So just follow me through quickly here. So, sorry, the writing is very small on some of them, but the top line shows a number of accredited ministers we have. That's active accredited ministers, doesn't include those who are retired. And in 10 years, that's dropped from about 1,600 down to about 1,280, something like that, depending on how you count it. These figures, by the way, were up to the end of 2024. Haven't quite updated them for 2025 yet. The bottom line, the orange one, shows a number of ministers who are in roles that are not in church, which would include me and the regional ministers and those who are doing chaplaincy and pioneering and perhaps a portfolio ministry, all good and valid callings. And yet, of course, as that number goes up slightly, it reduces the number of ministers available to churches. Is that a problem, or is that the movement of God? Something to discuss there. Is God moving our forms of ministry around? Possibly so. But it means the green line shows the number who are available to churches is declining. But the light blue line, third one down, shows a number of churches with a membership of over 40, which is a rough measure, very rough, of a church that might be able to afford a minister. So you might look at that and think, what's the problem? The number of ministers are declining about the same rate as the number of churches that could afford a minister. Let's not worry about it too much. Well, the problem is this, he says. Yes, there we go. The number of ministers in training entering college is going down, and in the last few years has fallen off a bit of a cliff. Now, maybe COVID's got something to do with that. But in 2024, we had, at the time, 6 colleges, and 15 people entered college. 15 across all of them. Do the maths. Now, I can add 2025's figures to this graph, so I'm glad to say there's been an uptick in 2025, but all that does is put us back on the trend line, which is still a decline. Now, may that number continue to rise, but I think clearly we've got an issue, especially when you look at this slide and you see on the right, there's a great slug of ministers in the next 10 to 15 years who are due to retire. I'm one of them. So that's a problem. And by the way, the average age of people entering training at the minute is 44. So by the time they come out of 3 years of training, if they do 3 years, they're 47. Again, they've only got, 15, 20 years or whatever of ministry to offer. So this is our issue. Just don't want to be all negative, but I'm just putting it out there. Clearly, this is a problem for all of us. Oh, and by the way, interestingly, only 46% of our churches have an accredited minister, for maybe obvious reasons, that's just shown. 23% have an unaccredited minister. 31% don't name anyone as minister. In practice, there may be one, but on our database, they're not shown as having a minister at all. So there's some interesting things going on which we might want to look into. So, just quickly, I'm not going to go through all of these in detail. I did a little bit of work in a sabbatical just over a year ago. Lots of conversations with people. Some of you were in those conversations. Thank you if you were. Why are people not coming forward? Everybody says, well, it's money, isn't it? It's the cost of training. And I'm sure that is a big problem. But denominations that pay for their people to go through training are seeing the same issue. So it's not just that. It's not just the money, though it is a problem. One thing is quantifiable. if the number of church members is going down and their age is going up, then there is a smaller pool to draw from. But I think there are other things that we can speculate may be going on. Changing generational expectations. Maybe if you're, 18 to 35, you think, well, God is calling me to ministry maybe. I might do that for 5 years, but then I want to go on and do something else. I don't feel called to a lifetime of ministry. So why would I train for 3 years and then do 3 years probationary study, only if it's something that I want to do for 5 to 7 years? Maybe there's changing expectations. Maybe people don't see ministry as a vocation they want to give their life to now. I don't know. Maybe they're involved in mission now and they don't want to go to college or do whatever. They're in the midst of serving God in their position now. Why would they want to spend time stepping out of that into training? Maybe church ministry looks unattractive. If the minister is a person that has to do all the work and take all the flack, hands up if that's your experience. No, don't do that. Why would you want to do that? So maybe there's something going on there. And perhaps something fractious Baptist relationships, that's maybe a presumption. But look, we all know that we've been through a tricky time with the consultation in the last few years, and there remains some tension. Maybe people are put off by that, don't know. Is there hesitancy over younger candidates? Well, anecdotally, yes, there still is, which is a great frustration to me when I hear those stories. Sometimes it can be churches saying to a younger adult, I'm sorry, you need more life experience. Sometimes, unfortunately, they may stumble at the hurdle of a ministerial recognition committee. We may have influence over both of those things. And then there are some things around which are within our control to do something about a lack of clarity about training, maybe some poor marketing, et cetera, a website and so on and so forth. We can do things around that. The last one is RLM, Recognised Local Ministry. I'll talk more about that in a minute, but there may be that people will think, well, I don't want to spend the time and the money going through accredited ministerial training, so I will do RLM instead. And I'll talk about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, or both in a minute. I'll give you a chance to, I'll go through this whole lot if I may, and then give you a chance to come back at me with some questions, but do think about some of these. They are speculative in most cases. So what are we going to do about it? Well, look, I've got a few ideas, and they are ideas, and we're working on them in what's called the Ministry Numbers Working Group. There are at least 2 or 3 people in this room who are part of that group. I really appreciate the time they're giving. There are some maybe simple things we need to look at, which is if somebody's exploring a calling, do they know who to go to? Your answer would be, yes, they need to speak to their regional minister. Do they know what a regional team is? Do they know who their regional minister is? Do we need to do something about a button on our website which would give them an email to someone who will give them a quick reply, an initial point of contact that will be warm and knowledgeable about processes and so on and so forth? That's one thing we could do. We need to possibly do some discovering ministry events. I think London have these. Not all associations do. This is our problem. There's inconsistency across the country. Do we need to do things that are nationally available online or at Baptist Assembly? So this year, 15th of May, on the Friday afternoon of Assembly, there will be a discovering ministry event, a few hours for people exploring calling to come and meet the colleges, meet some regional teams, meet the ministries team, have some stories of what ministry is like and what training is like, and maybe that will be an encouragement to them. Do we need to provide people who are thinking about a calling with coaching? Someone who will journey with them as they think, well, what is this calling thing and how do I test it? And what experience might I need to prepare me for an MRC? What do I need to do to test the calling even before I go to that formal step of going to the church and asking for a commendation? So we're doing some work around that, thinking what would those roles look like and who is going to do that coaching? Answer, some of the people in this room, has to be really. So that's something we're looking at. And this is a bit of a big one. We do this. Lots of people have already got qualifications or experience of ministry. They might have it from overseas. They trained in a seminary back in their home Baptist Union. Or they've been to Moorlands, they've been to LST, they've been to wherever. or they've just did some course with, I don't know, Birmingham Bible Institute back in the 80s or 90s, and they've got, since then, 15, 20 years experience. And we have got routes for them to come into ministry, a formally accredited ministry, but they're kind of round the back. People don't quite know what they are. And I don't know why we're not saying, come and have a conversation with us and we will find a bespoke route for you to get to where you want to be. And we will find ways of filling the gaps that may exist, or working out what the best pathway is, rather than them just sort of hitting the, computer says no, sort of, we can't fit you into our standard process. So we're already doing some work on that. So those I would describe as relatively simple things we could do, but the big one is this. Somehow we've got to move away from the idea of ministerial formation as what I've called the plain, the cliff and the plateau. So on the plain, you've got your church members, your leaders, the people who are serving faithfully in their local settings. And then they think, right, I want to be a minister. So they then have to face the cliff of training, 3 years, £30,000 or whatever else it may be. And then they reach the high plateau of accredited ministry. And there they stay for 20, 30 years. Well, this is a ridiculous image. For a start, there is no plateau. I hope you realise that. Once you reach accreditation, do not think that you've made it. Do not think that there is nothing more to learn. And I hope you are aware of kind of the framework for continuing ministerial development. It is incumbent on us all to keep learning. And if we think a college in 3 years can provide everything we need now for ministry in all its variety and all the challenges of today's society, we're joking, aren't we? We've got to keep learning. It's that idea of just-in-time training rather than just in case. You can't in 3 years learn everything you need just in case you will need it. You've got to keep building on it and keep working. And some of the things that people are now being trained to do, missional listening, for example. That wasn't a thing in my day. Do I need to learn about what that is if I was going back into pastoral ministry? We need to broaden our skills always. So the top end, the plateau, doesn't exist. But of course, ideally, the plain and the cliff face need to be challenged as well. What if we had, and this is the phrase we're using, an ecosystem of lifelong formation? This is the prize, where there is a continuum of learning and skill building and character formation from the person that is, about to say in the pew, nobody has pews, or maybe you do, listed building, you've still got them, I don't know. But from the person who's in local church leadership, right through to the minister who is approaching retirement and beyond, because of course so many in retirement carrying on ministering. What if we had this sense that there is a lifelong formation? And what if we had all sorts of different routes into that at all sorts of different stages? This is the prize we want to aim for, I think, so that we are all providing opportunities for learning and engaging in opportunities for learning and formation. That's where I'd like to head. The question is, how do we get there from here? And the answer is, don't know really. The answer is actually quite hard. And that's because we're set up to expect of accredited ministers a certain amount of theological rigour, which I think we heard earlier from Helen Painter, we can't do without if we're going to be properly reflective on the changes going on in society. We do need that theological rigour. At the minute, we tie that to a university-validated diploma or degree, which takes time and money to gain and requires some degree of expertise to train, to deliver, to provide. So these are the things that we're thinking, well, how do we break this down? Well, one thing we are trying to do is to look at that front end, is to build across the union, everywhere, accessibility for local leader training. So how can we make sure that everybody has some opportunity to start on that pathway, even if there is eventually a move towards gaining a diploma, becoming accredited, but let's start further back. And that's why this idea of recognised local ministry has started, where we can say to people, well, you can do a foundation in theology, and it's A-level standard, and it's done over 2 years, and it's one Saturday a month or an evening and a bit a month, or whatever it may be. It will give you a spiritual formation group to belong to, over those 2 years, once a month online, and you will have a mentor who will work with you. Can we get people at least into that pathway? Because I find that will bring people into a foundation of theology, it brings them into relationship with their association, and ideally into relationship with the college as well. And anecdotally, well, I'll say it here, I think the best example of this is what's happening through Regent's Park College, working with SCBA and CBA. And they've got something called the Learning Collective. It's run it's overseen by Jane Day, who many of you will know from Project Violet fame, of course, but this is the other part of her work she's been doing for a while. And I think it's providing a formation community for a bunch of people. There are 60 people on it at the moment, or it's 65 people on it at the moment. Not all of them are going to RLM. Some of them are just doing the modules, the training. 65 people on it. And isn't it interesting that Regent's Park College is the one that's bucking the trend at the moment in more people coming through to accredited training? Why is that? I wonder whether it's because they've got a pool of people who are being developed, and in relationship with them, they learn to trust the college, they learn to trust the association, and there's that community of learning. So forming learning communities, I think, is somehow the answer, the way we need to go. Getting there is tricky, and we're working on the detail of that. And we've got a proposal out there at the moment maybe to use some money that we've got, which were given to us as a legacy for ministerial training. That was as broad as the legacy was. And maybe we can use that to appoint some learning leads, let's call them that, people who can facilitate and encourage this type of local leader training, maybe to build, we've had a discussion about this, haven't we? Whether it's a pipeline or people will talk about, something from the grassroots, pick your metaphor, but to start, further up, further back, rather than just expecting people to make this sort of running jump at the cliff face. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. What's the next slide? Of course. So the question also is, what's your part in this? We'll come back to that in a moment. Maybe if there's time you can ask that a little bit more detail. But people will say, the union is not providing us with enough ministers. The union is not. Well, for a start, who's the union? The union is an organisation of churches, associations and colleges. And where do ministers come from? Well, they come from, clearly, the churches. So, therefore, this is a family-wide problem. And it means that we all need to be looking at who we are developing and releasing into ministry. I also wonder whether there's a reluctance. If you've got somebody really good in your church right now, don't you want to hang on to them? Last thing you want is for them to clear off to college and go and do something else and train and go elsewhere, because you need them in your setting. But this is what we need to do, I think, is to be those who are identifying calling and nurturing and working with that. So where's formation going at the moment? I think it's going probably to ways that are more accessible, that bit more of a, what's the word? I'm about to use a stairway metaphor, as if we're going up steps. The trouble with that is too linear. I think it's more, again, this ecosystem that we can come in from different starting points and you find different ways into learning and further character development. But that's where I think we need to go. Just need your help to work out how to do that. And that's, I guess, where the national debate is at the minute.